The Covid Bankruptcies. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I thought we'd have a look at this article from Bloomberg that was sent to me by a viewer. The Covid Bankruptcies. Lord & Taylor to Men's Warehouse. So it's interesting. Let's have a look at retailers where, well, are they blaming COVID when it's really bad decisions that have led them to go under? Here in Australia, at the beginning of the year, it used to be again and again and again, retailer going under, retailer going under, retailer going under. And you saw some of them didn't have much of a moat. Some of them had no online presence, and they weren't really that innovative. One retail chain looked very similar to another. Sometimes you couldn't even tell the difference between the products, at least, well, as a male, I couldn't on some of the female retail stores. So let's have a look at this, everyone. Let's have a look at this. So, retailers, airlines, restaurants, but also oil producers, fitness centers, and a prom dress retailer. These are some of the more than 170 companies that declared bankruptcy in the US this year and blamed the pandemic in part for their demise. Many were in deep financial trouble even before the governors ordered non-essential businesses shut to help contain the spread of the virus. Most will try to reorganize and emerge from court smaller and less indebted. The hardest hit, however, are selling off assets and closing for good. So we've seen that here in Australia too. We're looking at previous articles about insolvency practitioners. First it was they're not going to be enough people to deal with this, and then it was business is down. Half the number of businesses and compared to normal are going under. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the JobKeeper, the government interventions, the loan holidays are propping up businesses that are probably at the edge, probably about to tip over. So they include plenty of big iconic names: Hertz, Brooks Brothers, and Lord & Taylor, the oldest US department store. And we saw Hertz, just how the Robinhood investors just dogpiled into it. The vast bulk, though, are small and medium-sized businesses scattered across the country. Their downfall might not normally garner much attention, but it does underscore the full extent of the damage the pandemic has inflicted on the economy. The list compiled for this story is based on court records, statements or interviews in which business owners explicitly linked the virus to their filing. It is only a snapshot of the thousands of corporate entities that have landed in bankruptcy court since the pandemic took hold in March, and it doesn't capture the countless businesses that closed shop permanently without seeking protection in court. That's right, there's some people that are just going to give up. You can see here, look at all the businesses that are going and the size of them. There you go, Hertz, Diamond Offshore Drilling, Frontier Communications. The companies that have sought to reorganize or liquidate at least partly because of the pandemic, run the gamut of corporate America. Some had billions of dollars in assets. Others had only a handful of employees on payroll. Some, like apparel company Ascena, had stores dotting suburban malls across the country. The owner of the Ann Taylor and Lane Bryant chains is now considering closing more than 1,000 stores. And then there's Gold's Gym, the iconic fitness chain that furloughed almost 4,600 employees after the lockdowns. It's now being bought out of bankruptcy by the Berlin-based owner of the McFit chain. There you go. There you go, guys. Occasional Brands, a prom dress maker. I guess that prom dresses are an American thing. We don't really, not so much here in Australia. The class of 2020 will undoubtedly have some unique memories to hold on to. Bedrooms turned into classroom, remote learning, virtual graduation. But one special high school event won't have a page in many of their yearbooks. Proms. For Occasion Brands, a retailer that depends on that one night to drive nearly 3/4 of its revenue, the pandemic couldn't have come at a worse time. You couldn't really diversify for this, could you? As a brand like that. 75% of your revenue just disappears. Maybe I guess they could push for online, but it's never going to be the same, is it? Online proms. Occasion, the owner of promgirl.com and partner to Kleinfeld Bridal, was gearing up for its busiest time of the year in March when the pandemic first swept the US. What had been a $50 million a year business saw its revenue all but vanish seemingly overnight between lost sales and a surge in returns. Occasion filed for bankruptcy on July 22. Born out of the dot-com bubble, Occasion shipped its first dresses for the 1999 prom season. That time of year accounts for roughly 70% of the company's annual sale, according to court documents. So New York & Co., a women's apparel retailer in New York, with $405 million of estimated assets, filed for reorganization on July 13th. COVID-19 was the proverbial nail in the coffin for RTW Retail Wins, owner of apparel chain New York & Co. The 102-year-old retailer of women's workwear filed for bankruptcy with plans to shut a significant portion, if not all, of its stores after the pandemic drove off customers. But RTW conceded in court papers that it had struggled for years to weather changing fashion tastes and declining foot traffic in malls. It called its brands the latest victim of the retail apocalypse. And that's what we've been encountering here in Australia, particularly in the beginning of the year. In recent years, the company had relied on celebrity collaborations with the likes of Gabriella Union, Kate Hudson, and Eva Mendes to help drive sales among its core customer base of 25 to 49-year-old women. But the efforts fell short, and the company is aiming to run going out of business sales while seeking a buyer for its e-commerce operations. 102 years old. So Two Key Tavern, a bar in Kentucky with $1 million in estimated assets. I mean, there you go. Not going to be doing too well now, is it? On game days for the University of Kentucky's 8-time national champion baseball team, Two Keys Tavern in Lexington was the place to be. Before the pandemic, Wildcat fans could order a Calipati, a boozy blue ballfish named after legendary coach John Calipati. Well, we've all done that. At one time or another, had a fishbowl of booze. The walls were lined with jerseys and other memorabilia. Two Keys earned about 30% of its annual revenue during the March Madness basketball tournament. Wow. Oh, it's basketball team. I thought it was baseball. So the National Collegiate Athletic Association's decision to cancel the event because of the pandemic was a major blow. Then the statewide closure of bars in mid-March, on top of the long-running landlord dispute, led Two Keys and its owner, Seth Bennett's Sethco LLC, into bankruptcy court in July after more than 66 years in business. March is what makes up for every slow month, said J. Christian Dennery, the tavern's lawyers. So when it didn't happen, there was a real liquidity crunch. Two Keys hopes to either resolve the landlord dispute and reopen in its current building, or sell the company's assets to someone willing to reopen the tavern in a nearby location, he said. So, American Addiction Centers, operators of rehab centers in Tennessee with $449.3 million in estimated assets, filed for reorganization on the 20th of June. The company, which has 26 facilities treating people with substance abuse issues in 8 states, was already having trouble servicing its debt payments when the coronavirus hit the U.S. stay-at-home orders and travel restrictions helped drive a decline in outpatient visits and inpatient admissions, while the company was forced to spend time and resources keeping its facility open with enough staff and personal protective equipment so they and the patients could be safe. In May, admissions started to improve, but have not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. American Addiction Centers said in a court filing when it declared bankruptcy. All incoming patients are tested for the coronavirus and quarantined from the general population while awaiting test results, which restricts the number of available beds. Chief Executive Officer Andrew McWilliams found a silver lining in the pandemic, noting that the grim national mood is actually good for the company. The heightened stress, anxiety, fears, and social isolation in this unprecedented time has prompted more patients and their families to seek treatment, pushing demand for our services high, he said in a statement announcing the bankruptcy. That's kind of morbid, isn't it, guys? So Bounce for Fun, A bounce house rental company in Texas with $100,000 in estimated assets filed for liquidation on June 70. So, I mean, there you go. I thought kids would love that, wouldn't they? Would love that. So, small business, just $100,000. You know, we're seeing the whole spectrum here. For almost 2 decades, Bounce for Fun helped churches, schools, and homeowners associations make their parties more memorable for kids. The Frisco, Texas-based company had amassed a catalog of more than 100 attractions available for rent, including bounce houses, water slides, and obstacle courses. It even offered a 24-foot rock climbing wall and a trackless train. The Frisco, Texas-based company had amassed a catalog. Oh, we've already read that. But just as its peak season was about to kick off, states including Texas banned large gatherings, shut down schools, and asked residents to stay at home. Before mid-March, we were on track to have a record year. Oh, no. Paul Sumrow, the company's owner, said in an interview, when the coronavirus hit, we had 100% cancellations. Sumrow, who was only one full-time employee, obtained a loan through the Paycheck Protection Program, but that was hardly enough to keep going with 85 to 90% of this year's revenue gone. The numbers just don't work, he said. I'm not willing to go deeper and deeper into debt when there's nothing on the horizon that says we're coming back or not coming back. There you go. There you go. So Sugarloaf Craft Festivals. Craft fair operator in Maryland with $500,000 in estimated assets filed for bankruptcy in June 15. For 45 years, Sugarloaf offered artists across the U.S. a market for their creations, including jewelry, pottery, and textiles. Its 11 annual festivals, which featured demonstrations and hands-on workshops, ground to a halt in March as social gathering was banned. We've survived through wars, recessions, terrorist attacks, political upheavals, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, and more, the company wrote on its website as it announced it was shutting down. With no cash flow coming in, even a well-managed company cannot survive indefinitely. And that's the fundamental problem here. This is why people are arguing to open up the economy, because businesses are getting destroyed. And businesses with 45 years, no cash flow at all, guys. Northern Bear, a diner owner in California with $50,000 in estimated assets. I mean, there you go. Steve Andrews was a general contractor who built eateries for other people before he and his wife Debbie ran 2 of their own in Northern California. For 15 years, their Black Bear diners were popular places to sip coffee and exchange local gossip in the 2 small towns they operated before the pandemic hit. Forced to close their doors, the couple forlorn 50 of their 65 employees. Wow, a lot of people there. And tried to offer takeout, but diner food is comfort food, Andrews said. People come for breakfast, lunch, and company. Takeouts didn't work. Exactly. We were hemorrhaging so much money, I just couldn't do it anymore, the 67-year-old said in an interview. They tried to borrow $350,000 through the Paycheck Protection Program, but computer problems at their bank spit out the application before it could be processed in time to qualify. Their insurance company rejected their claim for damages, even though they'd paid for lost income coverage. See, this is the thing. I'm watching this New Yorker, Lewis, the computer, repairer guy, and he hates insurance. Apparently this income protection is just a complete rort. What do you think, guys? Let me know if you have had some experiences with that, because I've never trusted it, and I've been too cheap to pay for it. He and Debbie, who is 68, were forced to put their diners into bankruptcy in June and walk away. They've since sold their house and moved to Southern California, looking for a fresh start at a time when they'd expected the diners to subsidize their retirement. That's pretty tough. Bakery chain in California, Specialties Cafe and Bakery, $50,000 in estimated assets, filed for liquidation May 27. Specialties sandwiches, salads, and pastries had become a staple for thousands of office workers in downtown San Francisco and across the Bay Area. On a typical day, its Mountain View location will be packed with tech workers from nearby companies including Alphabet's Google and Samsung Electronics. Yet after 33 years in business, shelter-in-place restrictions essentially destroyed Specialties Market, according to the trustee for the estate, with some of the leases running more than $30,000 a month the company saw no choice but to shut its doors for good. Damn. We're going to see similar things here in Australia, guys. Similar things here in Australia. Just all these coffee shops that are dependent on the office workers, they're just going to cop it. In a bittersweet ending to its 3-decade history, Specialties gave away frozen dough for some 180,000 cookies to customers to show up at its Redwood City warehouse. Golden Gyms International, a fitness chain in Texas worth $50 million. Well, with $50 million estimated assets, filed for reorganization on May 4th. So, retired merchant marine veteran Joe Gould launched his fitness empire in a rough cinder block building near Muscle Beach in Venice in '65. With weightlifting equipment he built himself. Arnold Schwarzenegger joined the first Gold's Gym a few years later, and over 55 years the business began to franchise and grew to 7,000 locations. There you go. The company had its strongest ever year of worldwide growth in 2019, but the coronavirus, social distancing, and gym closures hit its business like a 500-pound dumbbell. No single factor caused more harm to the debtor's business than the current pandemic, the company said in a court filing when it forlorned almost 4,600 employees and declared bankruptcy. Gold's closed about 30 gyms when it couldn't renegotiate the lease with landlords, abandoning some equipment, and found other locations where members of its shuttered facilities could go to work out. The company is now planning to sell itself to German fitness company RSG Group for $100 million after it won a court action. We're absolutely not going anywhere, Adam Setstiff, Gold CEO, told members and employees in a video in May. The Roman Catholic Church for the Archdiocese of New Orleans, non-profit in Louisiana with $100 million estimated assets, filed for reorganization on May 1. Now, with the church, particularly in the States, there's a few other issues with why you may see them popping up. Because, well, it means that they've got other protections with regards to access to other sensitive documents in there. But also, donations and tithing is in the gutter. People can't go to churches. Churches are all getting closed. So we'll have to see. Problems at the New Orleans Archdiocese started long before the pandemic. Allegations of sexual abuse have been piling up for decades, leading to the removal of dozens of priests and deacons, according to a report the Archdiocese released in 2018. Like more than 20 other U.S. church districts that have sought bankruptcy protection to settle such claims in an orderly way, the Archdiocese with roots that predate the 1718 founding of New Orleans, filed for Chapter 11 on May 1. It listed assets and liabilities between $100 and $500 million. In the court documents, Father Patrick R. Carr said the Archdiocese faced financial challenges ranging from lawsuits alleging sexual abuse to a drop in offerings and collections at masses that are no longer publicly celebrated due to the pandemic. Klusner Lumber, a sawmill in Florida with $100 million in estimated assets. By early 2020, Klusner Group, a lumber producer based in Austria, was already running out of options to salvage a sawmill in Live Oak, Florida. Cost overruns and disappointing sales, combined with financial challenges by the Austrian parent, had forced executives in the US to consider a bankruptcy filing or a liquidation. But as the pandemic began to spread throughout America, those plans were quickly thrown out the window. The executives, packed up bags, shut the plant, and left the country. The rush shutdown left the sawmill with no security guards or insurance. Employees who had learned they would no longer need to show up for work sued the company, alleging they weren't given enough notice and haven't received their final paychecks. The U.S. counsel resigned after being left with unpaid invoices. Well, there you go. The Florida sawmill eventually filed for bankruptcy protection on April 30th. Its newly appointed chief restructuring officer later would explain to the court that the entire management team and various engineers had returned hastily to Europe in order to avoid a dangerous health situation in the US and potentially long-term travel restrictions. You can't really blame them, can you? You can't really blame them. United Cannabis, a medical hemp company in Colorado with $1 million in estimated assets, filed for reorganization in April 20. So financial trouble at United Cannabis began when a classic imbalance between supply and demand in November 2019 as the price of CBD plunged and the company laid off more than a third of its 150 employees, according to court documents. Then came the pandemic. In dealing a blow to the global economy, the pandemic depressed sales of CBD, industrial hemp, and derivative products, leading to more job losses. A dispute with UCAN's largest creditor, who tried to attach some of the company's assets, eventually precipitated the bankruptcy filing in April. Alpha Entertainment, professional sports league in Connecticut with $10 million in estimated assets, filed for reorganization on April 13th. The Houston Roughnecks were undefeated and had the best record in the inaugural season of the XFL, a new professional football league, when COVID-19 forced every major U.S. sports league to suspend their season. Alpha Entertainment, founded by World Wrestling Entertainment mastermind Vince McMahon, lost tens of millions of dollars in revenue when it cancelled the remainder of the XFL season and fired about 500 football players. How the XFL 2020 went from launching a promising new sports league to bankruptcy in just 2 months due to the pandemic. Well, there you go. As it prepares to file bankruptcy, McMahon lent the company $9 million with its assets as collateral, but he withdrew his bid to buy it out of bankruptcy in time for the 2021 season after other creditors complained. Now the company hopes to sell itself to another buyer in an auction next month. The premature demise of the league wasn't bad news for everyone. The Roughnecks quarterback P.J. Walker, who led the XFL in touchdowns before the shutdown, signed with the NFL's Carolina Panthers for a reported 2-year, $1.6 million contract. So Raven Air, regional airline in Alaska with $100 million in estimated assets. Alaska is twice the size of Texas, but with few roads and many remote villages that can be reached only by aeroplane. As fears of the pandemic spread in mid-March, some towns and villages around the state barred passenger flights into their communities. Raven Air Group, the biggest regional carrier in the state, saw passenger revenue drop by 90%. The company quickly ran out of money and filed for bankruptcy in early April, sparking alarm that the rural villages on its routes would be stranded without medical care, mail services, and other supplies. A free-for-all broke out. The mayor of the borough, covering 95,000 square miles across the state's far north, tried to commandeer Raven assets to ensure residents had food, medical transport, and supplies, but it was blocked by the state attorney general. A patchwork of other regional airlines stepped in to take over some of Raven's routes and businesses. The bankrupt company was later approved for $30 million in federal coronavirus relief funds, and in early July it sold many of its planes and assets to aviation competitors. So there we have it, everyone. A very interesting article from Bloomberg, just looking at, well, the many different faces of these economic restrictions on businesses in the US. And I think we'll have similar stories emerging out of Australia, sadly. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy a merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye for now.